Hi, my name is Dawn and I'm with Pushing Forward Women's Ministry. Today I'm going to be discussing domestic violence. Before I get started, I just wanted to give the disclaimer that I am not a therapist. I am a survivor of domestic violence and I'm going to be sharing my story. So, to give you a little bit of relevant background information about me, I am from California, but most of my story does take place in Texas. I moved to Texas when I was about 13 years old, and by the time I was 14, I had been molested by 3 different uncles, one on my mom's side and 2 on my dad's side. And because of this, I was really lonely, and it contributed to some behavioral issues. So when I was 14, I met a young man who was 19, and he gave me all the attention that I had been craving and started off being really nice to me. We dated for a while against my father's wishes, and I ended up getting pregnant and moving in with him. Well, shortly after I moved in with him, he began being very violent with me. It started off with a slap, and at some points he would punch me and kick me, and it just progressively got worse over time. And in addition to that, he would also cheat on me. And whenever I would bring up the cheating, he would assault me. So I was living with him and his grandmother, and I would talk to her about the things he was doing to me, and she would say things like, "Oh, well, all men cheat." And she might bring up him hitting me. She would say, "Well, my husband would hit me every now and then." So she kind of dismissed, what I was telling her as no big deal. Time went on, and I did get tired of it. Because like I said, it progressed. It even got to the point where he was like throwing beer bottles at me. And I contacted my family here in California, and I came home. I stayed home for close to a year, and during that time, he was calling me and asking me to come back, and said that he had changed. And I didn't grow up with my father in the home, and it was really important. I really wanted my children to grow up with their father. So I decided to go back to Texas, and I let my grandmother know that I was leaving, and she was pretty upset. I don't recall if she knew about the domestic violence or not, but I do remember she called over her 2 sisters, and the 3 of them, I really specifically remember the 3 of them in the living room praying for me. So I went back to Texas, and things were okay probably for about a month, and then he started to abuse me again, much worse than it was before. And one particular day I remember that he got really mad at me. I don't remember what it was about, but he began to choke me. And I really thought that day that he was going to kill me. He did at some point let go of my throat, and he got in his car and he left. Well, when he left, he took the house phone, so I couldn't call the police on him. Since there was no phone, I remember going to my neighbor's house and asking her if I could use her phone. I told her what happened and told her I was going to call the police. And this woman said to me that we had enough black men in jail and that she was not going to let me use my phone. She said I needed to be more understanding. So time went on, and after a while, I did get tired of it, and I left him, and I moved in with some friends. And then at some point, I met another man who's about 6 years older than me, and he's very charming and nice, and things started off really great. One evening, we were at his mother's house, and his cousin was there, and his cousin was making jokes, and I laughed at one of them, and I remember this man pulled me into the hospital bathroom and twisted my arm so bad. I was in so much pain, and he told me that I was never to laugh at another man's jokes. So that's how that abuse began. That abuse progressed into me getting punched in the face and kicked, and at some point I was even having guns pulled out on me. So I did one day get the courage to leave, and on that day he had cut up all my clothes because I had hid in the bathroom and he couldn't get to me. So because he couldn't get to me, he destroyed pretty much everything that I had. and then he left. And after he left, I took what I had on and I walked to a friend's house barefoot. About 100-degree weather. By the time I got there, I think it was probably about a mile. I had blisters on my feet, and she agreed to let me stay there. I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and during that time, he constantly harassed me. He even at one point tried to climb up the balcony to get in the house, and I called the police, but of course, by the time they got there, he was gone. And the following day after the balcony incident, his mother called me and told me that she believed that he was planning to kill me. So, and at this point in my life, they didn't care if I died. It was a very, very low point to me. But what was important to me is that if something did happen to me, that my children were home with my family. So I called my cousin and told her that I needed to come back to California, and I was catching a bus. And the very next day I got on the bus, and I came home, and I was here for several months with him calling me and harassing me. But then at some point he ended up going to jail for something else. And about 2.5 decades went past before I heard from him again. So that's my story, and I have a few points that I wanted to bring up in regards to domestic violence. I have them written down. The first one is this is a statistic from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and their information says that 1 out of 3 women are abused or in an abusive relationship at some point in their life, and 1 in 4 men. So that's a third of women and a quarter of men. That's a lot of people. And one thing that I didn't mention in my own story is that when I was a child, I watched my own mother be abused, and because of that helped contribute to me staying in a bad relationship. I justified it by saying to myself, well, my mom stayed, so I can stay. And another thing that I left out is that both of them watched their own father abuse their mothers. And again, I just really believe that when we allow our children to see us go through that, it contributes to the endless cycle of domestic violence. Another point that I wanted to make is that most abusers cannot and will not change without some type of psychological intervention. So if you are in an abusive relationship and you're hoping and praying that that person's going to change, hope and pray from a distance. You don't want to die or become severely injured while you're waiting for that change, while you're, hoping for that miracle. A lot of the times abusers will promise to change. They may change for a little while, but they usually always go back to the same behavior. And in addition to that behavior, a lot of the times they try to make you feel like it's your fault or that you deserve the abuse. Sometimes, like me, I dealt with a person trying to make me feel like I was nothing without him and that I couldn't survive without him. And I'm here to tell you that those are all lies. They're all lies. You don't deserve it. It is not your fault. And you are a child of God. He didn't put you on this earth to be anyone's doormat. So I just want to encourage you, if you are in a domestic violence or an abusive relationship, to pray for yourself. I really believe the prayers of my grandmother and my great aunts in that living room that day are what helped save me. So pray for yourself and then seek help. There's so many domestic violence hotlines and shelters out there, and there's a number there that you can call if you would like to get help. Get help and know that you are not alone.